Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Skinny Luka is real, and it's on magazine covers now. A lot to be excited about for the Lakers. Coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everyone for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free, never behind paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where over 36,000 subscribers are all hanging out and talking about Luka Dončić and his reshaped, reformed body. I thought, I was out working on my body, working on my physique for a week or so. I thought I'd come in and be a big deal, but apparently Andy Luka Dončić stole my thunder. He is on the cover of Men's Health looking good.
Okay, before we even get into how Luka looks, it's a dramatic change. To put this in perspective, I showed the Men's Health cover to my wife and my daughter, who, neither one of them are massive NBA fans, but they both know who Luka Dončić is. They both took a second. They're like, wait a minute, that's Luka? Like they both did not initially recognize Luka on this cover of Men's Health because he looks so dramatically different body-wise. And everybody is saying this, including Luka himself. But also, let's just take a moment to revel in and celebrate the irony of Luka Dončić being on the cover of Men's Health, which not that long ago would seem like the punchline to a really rude joke.
I think a lot of people have made the point that perhaps there's some revenge bod going on here. There's a lot of stuff. And I think there's a combination of a few things, Andy. We'll get into some of there's a lot of interesting stuff in the article. But one of the things that struck me about it was the idea that, Nico Harrison cost Luka Dončić a lot of money. He cost him a lot of reputational damage. He caused Luka Dončić a great deal of upheaval and angst, totally unexpectedly, being kind of torn away from the only professional homies known in the NBA, I should say. And all of a sudden, I'm not trying to make Luka out to be like a charity case here, but there was a lot going on here that Luka had zero expectation or influence over. It's not an Anthony Davis situation where he asked for this. Luka wasn't asking to leave Dallas and expect.
You mean when Anthony Davis showed up in LA, to make it clear, not when AD went to Dallas.
Right. When AD was trying to push his way out of New Orleans. So, yeah, but you're correct. But there's a lot going on here. And so, yes, I think, and we can all hope, that Luka Dončić has a chip on his shoulder and a rage towards Nico Harrison that fuels him to throttle the league for the next decade or so in a Lakers uniform. That's everyone's goal. But, Andy, one of the things that I thought was interesting about this Men's Health article is that it does make it clear that this is also part of, at least, based on what's coming from Team Luka at the very least, which is where all this, I think, is primarily sourced. It is part of an evolution.
Certainly not sourced from Team Nico.
It is not. It is part of an evolution. It notes that Dirk Nowitzki, the ultimate Mav, needed most of a decade before he started to take fitness seriously. It notes that Luka started putting his team together, a couple of years ago to try to move in this direction. And the whole operation, as we've talked about on this show, was sort of short-circuited by a finals run combined with European basketball and playing for Slovenia and injuries and never really getting healthy. And last year was his
and
worst.
Also, too, real quick, because I think this matters for Luka and the Lakers specifically moving forward. it got short-circuited, I think, to some degree by the Mavs' resistance towards Luka using his team as opposed to their team, because that had been long a source of tension, particularly in the Nico era of the Lakers with Luka, like the idea of him wanting to use his guys, like a lot of, frankly, a lot of players around the league. LeBron has his own team. This is not unusual at all, but there were, by multiple reports, some resistance towards this from the Mavs, and that was, not something that was leading to Luka to ask out, but it was something he didn't like.
Yeah, and so all of this matters. So I think it is. I don't want to discount the revenge factor here in this, but I think it is too reductive to say it's only that, and that there's no interest in Luka, that there was no part of him that was going to start to evolve more on the idea of taking care of your body better and all these other things as he starts to get closer, still not close, but closer to 30, getting close to a decade in the league and all that kind of stuff. So, and that is also beneficial to the Lakers, that it's not 100% revenge, makes it more sustainable, I think, over the long term.
I mean, I think it's both, in all honesty. Like, there's a big piece of both of this in here for Luka. He talks about in the article about, when I was 18 and first got in the league, this stuff was easier just because your body is younger. There's less mileage on it. You haven't fallen into as many NBA traps in terms of just the lifestyle. And I don't mean partying. I don't mean anything like that. I mean, like, eating like crap. I mean, frankly, if nothing else, Luka's transformation overseas, and this is not the first time Luka has looked better from an off season away from the States, and then over the course of an NBA season in the States gains weight and feels like a scathing indictment of
look, I mean, Andy, Dallas isn't New Orleans.
No,
but it's not a place you typically go to lose weight.
I mean, no, and look, this stuff matters. We talked with Julius Randle at length for an interview we did for The Athletic several years ago about when he went to the Pelicans after the Lakers renounced his rights and he became a free agent. The first thing he did was hire a private chef, because he said, I used to gain weight just on road trips against the Pelicans. I'm going to be here year round now. I've got to do things differently. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a realization for Luka of like, look, I am entering my prime, which A, is supposed to be my best years, but B, they're my best years in part as I get older. These are things I need to handle. Make no mistake, though, this is also revenge body and gallivanting all over town, showing it off. Like, Luka is going out of his way to make sure everybody sees his new hot bod and the fact that he now looks like he could be a male model. Like, there is no question that he wants everybody to see this. He's showing off the goods.
There's some human nature here too, because anybody who's like, neither one of us have ever, totally let ourselves go, but neither one of us is exactly like, you'd mistake us for, a professional, like a linebacker or something like that. We're in shape, whatever. But like, anybody who's ever been like, what, I got to get rid of 10 pounds. We've all been there, 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20, whatever it is. When you get to that point where you can see it, like the first 3 or 4 pounds suck because it's all work, it's all sacrifice, and you can't see it yet. But when you drop 10, when you get to like 15, you've been working out, you feel like all of a sudden you can see it and you like it. And there's a couple things, there are moments in here where, the writer notices like Lucas stops to kind of look at. And that is also important because once you kind of get used to it and you like the look of it, and Luka Dončić is a 26-year-old guy, like, I mean, you want to look good and all that kind of stuff. He sees it, like he has seen the transformation. And I think the fact that he likes the transformation is significant here. There's not one other thing. There are a few other things that this article gets into that I think are fascinating in terms of how Luka is training and what to expect from Luka on the floor next year, that I want to unpack. Plus, plenty more about what all of this means for the Lakers. We'll do it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Drink. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It combines grape, ginger, and lime flavors of your favorite golf drink into a quick, energizing shot. And whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with your friends, it's a hole-in-one for your energy game, because you never know when that perfect shot is coming. I've always said the beauty and the hook of golf, what make golf addictive, is every now and then a total amateur like me, not particularly good, will hit a shot that honestly a pro could not have hit any better. But you got to be ready and energized for that moment. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor of the Transfusion gives you the best part of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. And this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order. It cannot be used with other promotions. The code is also not good for subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost that you need to power through today. Order Transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today.
I remember, Andy, when Steve Nash was traded to the Lakers, and like one of the things you hear about a lot is like this conversation about athleticism and what an athlete is. Is this guy an NBA athlete? Is this guy not? And what stuck out to me is in this article is not just that the idea that, you know, Luka's could be leaner, you know, hopefully a little less susceptible to injury. They've done work to bring down his inflammation. Mixed sort of, what do they call it, like where he put down the basketball for, you know, a month, 5 weeks, whatever, and he was playing pickleball, he was playing paddle, like a different sports that they play over there. And he was, you know, you end up in a situation where like they're training for him in the athleticism that he has. It's not about, can I jump 5 inches higher, can I run, you know, 10%, 15% faster. Although he might be a little bit quicker up and down the floor. But there was a really great section of that article where they talk about the type of strength that he has in terms of changing speed and what you have to do to maximize that capacity to burst and stop. Different kind of athleticism, different kind of strength, and working on stuff that is crafted towards Luka's athleticism, because the notion that he isn't a top flight athlete is absurd.
Well, it's a different type of athleticism.
Correct.
And it's a type of athleticism that isn't it isn't typical for how we grade NBA athleticism specifically, but you know, that change of speed that Luka actually is elite. Like even among the most elite athletes in the league, this is the one area of athleticism that Luka can basically match anybody else. They refer to it in the piece as eccentric force, which is basically getting your muscles to contract and decelerate in that change of speed. And it's something that I think will help Luka offensively in terms of the way that he can free himself up for shots, get defenders on his heels. It wouldn't surprise me at all if, combined with just being lighter on his feet, less mass, it could maybe help him defensively as well, because that same change of speed that he uses against defenders, he can try to use that when he's being targeted defensively himself. And the better he can react with the need to change speed as a defender, or just to be able to change speed to catch up to somebody else. Like you said, it's not necessarily about up and down the court speed, but even if he can defensively, because this is one of the areas that I'm very curious to see if Luka benefits, if it gives him an extra second and a half that he can stay with somebody else, so a help defender or somebody can rotate, that 1.5 seconds can be the difference between a defensive stop, a possession that ends with a stop, or part of the eventual path straight to the basket. Like those seconds, tiny seconds, really do matter.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an area where I think the deceleration on both sides can be a really big deal.
Yeah, and you talked about Nash, and like Luka has a great quote in the article where it's athleticism isn't just about jumping really high, and like I agree with you. I think most of where we'll see these benefits, other than Luka, hopefully just staying healthier. He's always been a guy who's played a lot of games until last year. And so, is this year, is he able to play more? Is he able to stay on the floor and avoid last season's injuries, the soft tissue stuff like the calf and whatever? If he does get hurt, if he's starting from a place, a lower weight and all that kind of stuff, will it help him get back faster? But I agree with you. I think it's the mobility on defense where we'll see. Because look, I mean, as for those of you on the audio and not watching on YouTube, won't see my air quotes, as bad as Luka was last year, and it really was his worst season as a pro. I think most people seem to agree. The numbers offensively were still quite good.
Luka could be Luka could be 400 pounds, and as long as he is able to play, he would put up bonkers offensive numbers because he's just that talented.
The assists are there and all that kind of stuff. Those numbers are going to be there, but it's not about him becoming a lockdown guy. I totally agree with you. It's a matter of what does it mean to your defense if Luka is 15% better. If Luka's 15% more mobile, which makes him, because he's not a god-awful defender. He's just good at certain things and not so good at other things. So if he's 15% better, what does that mean for Austin Reeves next to him? What does that mean for LeBron next to those guys? What does it mean for how you can utilize Marcus Smart, presumably in the starting lineup? That's where you and I both believe it'll be. What does that mean for DeAndre Ayton? Like, all defense in the NBA is a puzzle. And so how the pieces fit together, 15% better, that you don't have to maybe cover for Luka for everything, don't have to cover for Reeves and certain, like that can make a really big difference.
Well, it can also too, like some of the things that Luka does well, like for example, he anticipates very well. It's why he can play passing lanes well. It's why I think he's actually pretty good at bodying up and anticipating where somebody is driving and actually meeting them there, like things like that. Again, just being a step or two quicker. It's also interesting too, like one of the parts of this profile of Luka that I thought was pretty hilarious and felt very much like Luka is they talked about how when Luka went a month or so without playing basketball, which in and of itself was an argument. Luka did not want to put down a ball for that long, but he eventually agreed. And beyond the weight training and the conditioning stuff that they did for him, like you said, they were playing pickleball, paddle, things like that. And Luka ended up eventually enjoying it. I think seeing the benefits of it, but also he liked it because it was something that was competitive. And Luka actually points out, I got in a bad mood when I lost, but I didn't lose very often. And it reminded me of how when Istok Franco was on while you were on vacation, and Istok has covered Luka forever, going back to like Slovenia, Real Madrid. And I asked him about Luka with defense and how, like, theoretically, before we even saw this pictures, like the fitness could help. And he talked about how with Luka, sometimes the best way to utilize him defensively is actually in more challenging assignments, because it actually brings out that competitiveness in Luka. And like Tim McMahon, I believe, talked about this as well when we had him on when he was promoting his book about Luka. Like Luka is really insanely competitive. And often the things that when you see Luka look, I don't know, for lack of a better way of putting it, disinterested at times on that end of the court, it can sometimes be a product of not necessarily being challenged enough. So the sweet spot for Luka might be the most difficult assignment that he can reasonably handle, because that will keep him most engaged. And if you're looking to do something like that, beyond the overall effect of, hey, if Luka doesn't have to have the easiest assignment, maybe you can give that to LeBron at times because of his age or whoever. But if he's more fit, if he's a little bit quicker, if the conditioning is better, that might make it easier to land on that sweet spot with Luka defensively.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and then we can go to break and a couple other things to talk about with this. I think there's another like basketball part of this, because Lucas certainly heard the chatter after the finals. Like, nobody played more minutes, nobody scored more points. Somebody, like, the idea that Luka somehow was like a liability to the Mavericks in that playoff run is beyond absurd, which is part of the reason Mavs fans found the whole trade to be so ridiculous. This idea that, Mavs can't win with Luka on the floor. Like, you got to be better defense. Like, the guy not dragged. There was a pretty good team around him, but took him to the finals and played more minutes than anybody. It wasn't because he was out of shape that they lost that series or something like that. It's like, at some point you just, you run it, but like, he heard this idea that like he was attacked and targeted that entire series, and he is a liability and all this. Last year was just not an opportunity. I'm not saying he's faultless, that he did everything perfect. That's not my point. But the timing of events essentially made it impossible for him to really respond to that, because he didn't have an off season. He didn't have an opportunity to get himself healthy and get himself as fit as he, even maybe not cover of Men's Health, but on the program that he wanted to be. He did not have a chance to do it. And so this season is the first season for him to really respond, not just to last season's stuff, but the criticism that came from the finals. And so I think, again, when you put all of those things together, you're starting to see a foundation for, again, just a really helpful chip on his shoulder.
Absolutely. There's also I want to get into a couple things when we come back. About one other benefit of this with Luka that I think can be team-wide and connected to Luka, but not necessarily directly on the court, but also to some of the sour grapes that you're going to hear from Mavs fans, maybe even message from the Mavericks organization, to which I say, cry more. Get into that coming up next.
So we'll get to your stuff here in a second, Andy, things, but I do want to note, like, there was a lot of indications on what day is it? Monday. I've been traveling, so remembering when things were happening over the weekend. Was it Monday? I'm not totally sure. As I catch up, multiple people reporting that there is a growing expectation that Luka might actually sign an extension with the Lakers sooner rather than later. I know a few weeks ago, Andy, we were talking about, like, Brian Windhorst saying, don't freak out if it takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever, because typically he doesn't do a lot of NBA business while he's also doing Slovenia business, with Eurobasket and whatever. And so the indications are that he actually might sign closer to that August 2nd eligibility. And Andy, the Lakers, certainly, if you're a tea leaf reader, are feeling really good about what that relationship looks like after things like Luka helping recruit Marcus Smart, to sign with the Lakers, as opposed to many other teams that were interested in him.
Well, he also just happens to be in LA on August 3rd for part of a Nike event that he is, I don't know if he's hosting or helping promote or whatever. It's some global one-on-one tournament. He's had stops in New York.
Around the best one-on-one players in the world.
Yeah. And this led to Luka, by the way, at Yankee Stadium. And this is where you really know that Luka is in shape, because it's one thing to look svelte in, dark navy or black shirts. Things
the photography's in there, and they're kind of making it look good. It's Men's Health. They know how to make people look fit.
But also, those are slimming colors. But white can be very unflattering, which Luka wore at Yankee Stadium. There's no trick to photography there. My man's looks hot, like white hot. The man looks like a damn model. But, like, he's going to be there on August 2nd or August 3rd, right at the time where he can actually sign this thing. So it works out at least potentially perfect. He's going to be right there before he eventually goes back to Slovenia for Eurobasket. A couple of things that I wanted to get into in terms of what this means moving forward, really quickly, to address these sour grapes that are inevitably coming from Mavs fans, from the Mavericks organization. Well, this proves Nico was right. Like, this would have never happened unless he got traded. Like, if he had stayed in Dallas, you know what? I don't care. I don't give an F, man. That's Dallas's problem. That's Nico's problem. They had 6.5 seasons to reach Luka along these lines. And I know that I asked both Nick Angstaff from Locked On Mavs and Tim McMahon, to the best of your knowledge, was there ever really like a difficult conversation, sit down with Luka over this? Hey, we want you to be a Mavs lifer like Dirk, who you quite literally, Dirk's last season was Luka's rookie year. It was like a true passing of the torch. We want you to be that guy, but we have these concerns. And neither Nick nor Tim, who know that team very well, was certain that something that direct ever happened. And that is as much, if not more, a failure on the part of those guys. Say what you will about the Lakers and their history of star-effery, which you and I have often been critical of. JJ Redick was not afraid to throw out the championship shape. You know, everyone needs to get in championship conditioning line. That may not have been solely about Luka, but it was certainly not about Luka. And that was before Luka was locked up and like risk of losing whatever. They said the thing that needed to be said. Maybe the context changes it, but bottom line, Dallas, you had your opportunity to make this happen and you didn't. Do better next time. The thing though that I think go on.
Oh yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. No, I think we may be going. I think we may be going to the same place. So go ahead.
The thing though that I'm very excited about for the Lakers moving forward, beyond the individual ways that this may help Luka as a player, keep him on the court more, all that stuff, I think this can be a team-wide galvanizing thing, like a real let's effing go type thing, because you know Luka's teammates have all seen him, and they all have to be like, holy bleep, like holy bleep, he looks like a different dude. And when that guy, heading into his first full season of it officially being Luka's team, we all know it's Luka's team, it's Luka's franchise. When he commits himself heading into a season like that, it puts an extra level of accountability and onus, and I would even say inspiration, with everybody else, because you want to match the cues being set by your leader. And this is Luka really stepping up in a way that everybody has said he's needed to. I think it makes it very difficult in a great way for other guys not to follow suit when they see this.
I think like LeBron with defense, all that stuff. Like, you need your best players, ideally, to set the best examples. Doesn't always work that way. I don't mean necessarily they need to be your most vocal leaders. They got to be yelling and screaming and do all that stuff. Be great with the media. Like, no, but it is always better when your best players have the best habits. Say what you will about Kobe, particularly earlier in his career, and his ability to work with teammates, to relate to guys, to have multiple ways to bring a guy along. For a long time, Kobe sort of every problem, he only had a hammer and every problem was a nail. And as the toolbox expanded for him over the course of time, and as he got better as a leader and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing you would never accuse Kobe of is not being, like, he set an example of, like, this is the standard of being ready to play, of being, taking your job seriously and being fit. And even then, he didn't take his diet seriously over the first few years of his career. I mean, we had conversations with him about that, but he still, the dude put in time in the gym and all that kind of stuff. He just elevated even more as he got a little bit older. And you compare that to Shaq who famously didn't do those things. And in a lot, it impacts your team when your best players don't take that stuff as seriously. And, LeBron, when he dialed in on defense last year, that kind of come to Jesus moment after the Miami game, it turned around what the Lakers were doing defensively. And I think I agree with you. Everybody sees Luka and they're going to be excited about it. Marcus Smart, I read something this week, I think it was from Stein, saying that he's changing his body a little bit kind of after an injury-filled season and all that kind of stuff. LeBron is always going to be fit. Like it elevates the group, but the best stuff now has to come from Luka because this is Luka's team.
Yeah. And these are also the signs of Luka taking that responsibility seriously. And obviously, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves. Like we have not even reached August yet, much less preseason, much less an actual season, much less hopefully several years with Luka in a Laker uniform. But you can only grade based on what's in front of you. And you can only try to read tea leaves and figure out what it means based on the things that have happened. And one of the things that happened is Luka has very clearly dedicated himself to being in a better athletic shape and addressing, at least theoretically, some of the things that, as great as Luka has been, there have been certain pitfalls, I think, with injury that I think reasonably you could suspect are connected in some way to conditioning or weight or just too much mass. I think he's still going to be, after leaning out, strong as hell. I mean, one of Luka's big advantages has always been he's really, really strong. But even if you lose some of that mass, if you're replacing it with more lean muscle, you're going to remain strong. And I think Luka's just naturally strong. Period.
These are not dumb people.
Right.
And strength and weight are not the same thing. And they are not, I can guarantee you, they are not sacrificing an ounce of Luka's functional strength, and more likely they're adding to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
again, he's a
100%
strong
agree.
dude, just inherently to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just leaning him out a little bit. And so I look at this and it validates. If the Mavs guys could say, yeah, sure, like you said earlier, it can validate their thought too. I don't care about what but like for the Lakers, you need to see these signs. You're going to sign Luka to whatever contract he wants anyway. To erase any of that back of your mind stuff like this, the last 3 weeks of news have been fantastic. And I'll tell you, I'm actually really excited that he's got Eurobasket to go into because like there's this. He had a break to get his body right. He had a break from basketball to do different kinds of training. He's back on the floor now. There's this progression to his offseason. Now he gets to play some games, and then he'll get a little bit of chance to recover before training camp starts. And you can there's this flow of end of last season into the beginning of next season that is perfect, that he seems to have a phenomenal plan for.
And at least on my part, I'm going to leave you with a line from this profile of Men's Health that I think is really great in terms of figuring out at least how sustainable this could be moving forward. Lucas says of, just the work that he's been doing to rebuild his body, quote, "If I stop now, it was all for nothing." And, it's very much along the lines like, when I quit smoking, I was a pretty heavy smoker for a decade and a half, and eventually quit. And once I really quit, once you start getting those days under your belt of having quit, it becomes that much more of an incentive to stay quit, because you're like, well, then what was the point of going 6 months without smoking if I'm just going to start again? And, it's the same thing with any vice, or I don't even want to call it with Luka vice necessarily, but a lifestyle change. The more days you get under your belt doing this, the more results you get that you like, the more incentivized you are not to backslide.
Yeah, it's the routine. It becomes your, what do they say? Like you got to do something for 30 days before It can be considered a different habit. Or, there are all these things. Like, you just have to do things. So you have to live with something for a certain amount of time before it can really become your new normal. And so hopefully this is Luka's new normal, and we'll see. But anyway, in between, Locked On Lakers is you can go hang out with that. I forgot. It's been so long, I forgot how I end this show. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where we can go hang out with over 36,000 subscribers to the channel. Check us out. Spotify, subscribe there. Subscribe on Apple, iTunes. Do make sure you're getting that audio subscription as well as what you see on YouTube. We'll see everyone tomorrow.